Welcome back to another edition of the Dirty Verdict podcast. I am Peter Taff.
I am Kyle Herbert. You're a full-time litigator and part-time contributor.
And I am full-time litigator Bill Ogden.
We have a fantastic guest today, a good friend of mine from Dallas. I don't have many of those from Dallas, Mr. Todd Clement. Todd, welcome in.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Our first Dallas guest.
Yeah, if you go back and listen to the Dirty Verdict, we might have shit on Dallas a little bit, specifically the Dallas bar. Apologies.
You know, that's kind of common from down here, and guilty.
Congratulations on the Rangers World Series. We know how it feels. We just had it in 17 and then again. So we got it.
You know, first time, long time is always the best time.
It's the best.
And I got to tell you, as a 30-year season ticket holder, so sweet.
There was a lot of pain in those years.
11. So there wasn't just like all the Dallas Cowboy misery. 11 is like the worst thing that ever happened in my sports life. And now it's not there anymore.
Yep. Now you got your replica ring and you got it. And
hey, we're going to have so much fun with you guys for the next 3 or 4 years. It is going to be a blast.
You think that? We just signed a big arm.
You said 2011 is when they were, like an out away from...
Yeah, just go ahead and bring it up.
Is it worse?
I just, for that,
literally...
Where were you when that happened?
I was sitting in our TV room, my son and I, and it happens, and I don't know how that door stayed on the hinge as I walked out of the room, stormed out. We came back. Most people don't know. We came back and tied it in the ninth. I couldn't even watch because I knew they were going to choke again. So it was like for a month I was depressed. It was that bad.
Yeah.
And so when you got your tickets 30 years ago, was that the not the current stadium, but the one that was kind of the new ballpark?
That was 2 stadiums.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean,
They opened Arlington like in the 90s, early 90s?
No. We were the Washington Senators, so they moved in either the late 60s or early 70s.
No, I mean the ballpark in Arlington.
Yeah, well, they like late 60s, early 70s was the original ballpark, and that place was a hellhole. You'd have a day game in July or August. You could not give those tickets away to the biggest fan in Dallas because you were right there in the sun. It was 105 degrees on metal bleachers.
They were terrible.
But one thing, you could bring a cooler in.
You
with
could.
Anything.
BYOB?
Anything, whatever you want.
Yeah, because they had to almost beg you to come, and and then Hicks got when we built the next stadium. Hicks had it, and of course George W. was our general manager at the time, and they did not have enough money to put a roof on it, so they basically Baltimore the thing. The ballpark kind of looked like Baltimore. It was a really nice ballpark. And then, of course, literally in less than 20 years, it's obsolete because, again, you can't give away your tickets in July and August when they suck. And let's face it, they've sucked big time for the last 15 years. And so that's when we finally got the new stadium. You guys have loved it, I'm sure. Y'all have had indoor now for how long?
Well,
2000,
I think
2001?
Hold on.
Yeah.
The Astrodome is in Houston. We've had air-conditioned sports
since
like the early 60s. It's like the Stone Age in Dallas. Like,
Fire.
I mean, we'll show you how to build a condensing coil. Air conditioning is just one step away. You guys can enjoy.
All right.
So, Todd, what do you do for a living?
I'm mostly Rangers fan, but occasionally a plaintiff's lawyer.
Okay. Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Pampa, Texas. Believe it or not, I am a hustling Pampa harvester up near Amarillo.
The Harvester's y'all's mascot?
We are the only harvester pretty much in the country.
Todd, let me interject here. Is it true that you were recently inducted to the Pampa Harvester Athletics Hall of Fame?
We got athletics, but if you looked into his body, you would know that there's no chance it was athletics. But instead, my sainted mother, who passed it in 2020 at 94, got to see me in 2018 inducted to the Pampa High School Hall of Fame. And I will tell you, she scoreboarded everybody in the freaking town.
See, I told y'all mathletes were athletes. What'd you get? So how did that come about?
You know, the really cool thing was, and hopefully we'll get into it a little bit.
Start over with that answer.
Yeah, sure.
Tell
really cool thing was, and hopefully we'll go into it a little bit, been a real voice for distracted driving all over the country as far as proponent of safety. And a friend of the family decided that that was worthy of proposing us, and went ahead and did it. Had a bunch of people recommend me, and it's kind of a cool thing. All of us, particularly who were huge nerds in high school, there is nothing cooler than getting the Toby Keith, how do you like me now stuff. And it was a really neat thing, especially for my mom.
None of us here know what it would be like to be less than super popular in high school.
Come on, with that mop of hair, how could you be anything but?
Well, if you were looking for somebody like from the drama club or the AV club, Bill is probably.
I played Zuko in high school.
All right. So
Killed that.
Todd, out of Pampa, straight out of Pampa.
Where is Pampa? I don't know.
By Amarillo.
Okay, so go to Amarillo, take a right for 60 miles. It is the only other substantial town in the entire Texas Panhandle. We were about 25,000 growing up. Very, again, you're close to Amarillo, but it was pretty much, you just stayed there. It still is in large part.
Biggest rival, Dalhart?
Bulldogs.
Ooh, okay.
The dreaded.
Yeah. And, Jay Harvey, if any of you guys know Jay Harvey down in Austin,
Yeah.
Jay just got the Texas Watch Champions of Justice Award this last year, and Borger Bulldog. And, of course, he got it first because they were kind enough to award it to me about 2 months later. And so the Borger Bulldog Pampa Harvester rivalry continues and will continue till the day we die.
Harvesters fight,
There you go.
and harvest.
Okay, so out of Pampa, where did you go next?
Texas Tech, undergrad and law school. Pampa is one of those places that, if you're going to the big city, you go to Canyon and go to WT is what we call it now. It's Texas A&M, West Texas A&M. Lubbock was a pretty big, 200 miles away, and it had more than 2 traffic lights. But nonetheless, that's where I went for both undergrad and law school.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And then what, you were third in your class at Tech?
Might have been.
Yeah, okay.
I was a total nerd. I laugh and say my son just graduated from Kansas last year as a 1L at SMU. He had more fun in 2 weeks in Kansas than I did in my entire undergrad and law career.
But he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
Kid kicked ass on his SMU grades. So it made, Plano is going to be a little harder to make than Pampa.
So they say.
So out of Tech, third in your class, which I believe is true, and you work for the Supreme Court?
That was a really cool thing. So Frank Newton had come from Baylor to be dean at Tech. And some of y'all, if any of y'all are Baylorites, would know who Frank was. Frank was a pretty legendary professor.
Before you go any further, everyone here is a huge fan of Baylor and their law school and just the Baylor community.
In Waco.
Every episode, we figure out a time to shit on Waco and or Baylor. So just have
That's why Frank left, because it sucked.
Yeah, Frank saw, he was like, there's going to be a podcast.
I just needed to know that. But Frank came to law, was a dean my third year, and he looked at me and he goes, "You're raw. You need some finishing." And so he suggested that the Texas Supreme Court would be a good thing. Guys, this was back during the golden age. We had people in the Supreme Court. I worked for Franklin Spears, who was an amazing judge, but we had C.L. Ray. We had Oscar Mousy.
So this was like during Reagan.
Garland. Yeah, this was one where...
This is like late 80s?
87, 86, 87.
87, great year.
Joe Jamel, 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
Supreme Court.
Right after I left, there might have been a wee bit of controversy at the Texas Supreme Court that might have turned over the whole damn court. But, I kind of learned, I kind of got to drink the mother's milk, truth be told, from a bunch of really good judges and, put me a long ways towards where I am today.
So after you got done drinking Justice Spears' milk, where'd you end up?
Well, then, back then you didn't exactly go to work for a plaintiff's lawyer. And so what did you do? You went to work for a big bad defense firm.
Sure.
So I went to work for a Dallas insurance defense firm called Bob Hamilton. I worked for Bob Bile, who was a former ABOTA president nationally. And he was really great about basically, if you had a little bit of talent, he'd just throw your ass in the deep end to see if you could swim. And I dog paddled for about 5 or 6 years there.
And yeah, what's happened to Bile Hamilton?
You know, they imploded roughly 10 years ago. You know, just like a lot of other Dallas firms did. You know, we're seeing such, it's hilarious. My son, who's a 1L, is interviewing for summer clerkships, and he'll say, Dad, I'm you know, interviewing for X, Y, and Z. I won't know the damn firm because, you know, when all of us kind of started, yes, V&E still exists, Baker Bot still exists.
No, they do. God, they do.
But in Dallas, we've got very few other than Haynes and Boone legacy firms that have exist. Everybody else has got named. And that's exactly, you know, Vile, you either merge or you die, and they never merge.
Well, that's what they say. You go to Dallas to die. That's why we stay down here.
I knew that was going to happen. Can I keep track of how many shots are taken?
100%. You can shoot them back. We take them better than we give them.
I get it. So, yes.
So for the benefit of our listeners, and who may not be from Houston or Dallas,
Or Texas.
and I don't know if this works both ways, but in Houston, sometimes you'll be telling a story about an incredibly difficult person to deal with, and invariably in our circle of friends, somebody will be like, is this a defense lawyer from Dallas? And that joke works in almost every other city in Houston. And I don't know why it always seems to be true. I'm currently in trial with a defense lawyer from Dallas. And it's just, what do you make of that?
You know, what we used to have was we had a very sophisticated bar in Dallas on the insurance defense side. And just like every other major city, you know, we suddenly, you know, everybody went in-house. And so it absolutely cratered a lot of very good firms and very good lawyers. We still have a fair number of defense firms in Dallas that, honest to goodness, are good human beings that we regularly can do business with and can litigate with, and know that if they say the sun's coming up tomorrow, you don't need to look outside. But they're more in the area of trucking. They're more in the area of catastrophic type injury. And frankly, it matters if they've dealt with you a few times. But I can certainly imagine some of y'all's horror stories are true because we all have the same horror stories back home as well.
I'm a people person. It always shocks me when people don't like me, especially opposing counsel.
I'm never
Well, yeah, the perception, of course, in Houston is that Dallas lawyers are more aggressive, more Rambo. I think Rambo actually generated from Dallas defense. I think the Lawyer's Creed, or
it was.
that something came
Absolutely. No, it literally came out of Dallas. Absolutely.
So that was in the late 80s, early 90s when that all happened. And then, so has that changed? Or
Yeah, we don't see. I mean, that was back. Bill Burr. It was
Bickle and Brewer.
Bickle and Brewer.
That's who spawned that.
Yep.
And that was, you know, and that was more in the area of business litigation than it was in the area of RPI litigation. That was really big. I mean, that literally was big when I became a lawyer in 86, 87, when I got to Dallas in 87. That was kind of the standard because they paid more than anybody in town. They literally worked their people to death. And they would literally say, if somebody said, "What is your name?" they would say, "I don't understand the word name. Will you define that for me?" And that was sort of they were legendary for that. Others began to copy it. They didn't really, though, copy it in the area of PI, in my experience. We did not really get that culture. Certainly, you know, in the old days, you could take depots all day and all night. You know, I would notice call for a depot, and you know, we wouldn't get to anything salient till about, day 2, day 3, when at that point he would have admitted that he did kill Jimmy Hoffa and buried him in his backyard. True story. To make the thing stop.
Because the depot notices still say start at 10 a.m. today
And finish until
day to day until complete.
Yeah, 6 hours.
Yeah.
Everything, in my opinion. And I mean, ask y'all, when's the last time you took a 6-hour deposition?
Ironically enough, so I take a very fast depot. In fact, I normally memorize the basic facts of the case, everything in the police report, all that kind of stuff. So I don't have to flip through to exhibits unless I really want them. I take a really fast depot, normally 2 hours or less. And I'm involved in this commercial litigation case with one of the white gloves law firms here in Houston.
which one? Dox them.
I don't know that I should, because they would these are the kind of folks who would file a motion for sanctions.
Yeah, you're okay.
And they put up a corporate rep who did, name, rank, serial number. I don't know nothing about nothing. And I felt compelled to depose him to make sure I knew exactly what he did not know. And they were wasting my time, and they sent 3 lawyers to sit there and stare at me. And I thought, well, I'm here. Let's party. And I used every second of 6 hours. And at the other side, the lawyer said something kind of smart to me, and I was like, this will continue day to day until the witness answers questions. It was great. But I've probably taken a 6-hour depo in 20 years, maybe twice.
20 years? How old are you?
I'm a million. I'll be 47 next month.
Oh, wow. You don't look a day over 54.
Well, thank you, Todd.
Yeah.
You're a young-looking fella yourself.
Thank you.
All right, so Todd, we covered the Dallas bias that we have in Houston, and you clarified that it's unjustified. So turning back to you, so you're at Bile Hamilton for 5 or 6 years, and you decide at some point you want to go jump on the other side.
Yeah, I did. We handled a couple of plaintiffs' cases over at Bile. I knew from day one at torts at Texas Tech, I wanted to be a plaintiff's lawyer because it just seemed so much more fun. And we handled a couple of really big cases at Bile for that time. And I got to be the number 2 behind Mr. Bile in those cases. And ultimately just thought, it's really easy to handle multi-million-dollar cases. I think I want to go do that myself. So I went out with a buddy of mine that was a property tax lawyer. Very, very kind to allow me to do property tax work for a couple of years.
A lot of lawyers don't know this. Property tax is like the sexiest of all the special.
And I've got to tell you, when you really get it deep into that ad valorem tax code, sometimes you got to go take a shower halfway.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
It is a fascinating thing.
Yeah.
But this buddy of mine did allow me to do that. Every time a case walked in the door, which I never had a business plan, I never had a clue where the next one was coming from. Back then it was 20,000 was the minimum limits. And if you happen to get a $20,000 limits case, it's like, hey, honey, we're having steak tonight.
Yeah.
And so, literally for the first 4 or 5 years of my practice, did not even so much as have a secretary. Had somebody doing a little bit of administrative stuff for me, but luckily because I could type really well and because I was self-sufficient, I did it on my own because I was pretty sure that last $20,000 policy limits case that we settled was probably the last case we would ever settle for the rest of our career.
That's one way to look at it.
So the property
Keeps you hungry.
that was when the appraisals come out and you're challenging.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. I mean, he had a great practice, all joking aside. I mean, he represented a lot of the office buildings and apartments and everything else, still does. And he's still a very, very dear friend. We continued office together for almost 20 years. And he's developed this great national practice of doing that. And it's a highly administrative practice. And it's something certainly all of us that have seen our property taxes go up exponentially the last 3 or 4 years, certainly know that there's plenty of business out there.
Yep. Well, there's a lot of like non-lawyer businesses that will do that now.
They do. They've got a quasi, you don't even have to be a freaking paralegal. You can just be a property tax consultant.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some massive businesses that do that and make tens of millions of dollars. It's a very lucrative field.
So when did you make the all-in jump, full-time, personal injury, that's it?
Probably when my son was born, because I was even doing I took a few defense cases with me. Again, there was no master plan here. It was just, let's just see if we can make a living. So when my son was born 23 years ago, we finally hit something that made it pretty clear we were going to stay for a while. And that's when I joined TTLA, because up until then, I couldn't join TTLA because if you had a defense case, TTLA required absolute purity. And so one of the reasons why I threw off all my a little bit of defense work I had, was I decided I was going to go all in.
Well, so TTLA, Texas Trial Lawyers Association.
Yes.
You're heavily involved in that and have been for a long time.
Yeah, I have. I got blessed. So a couple of things real briefly, and I don't want to proselytize too much.
Yeah.
as a solo practitioner, the single most valuable thing to me when I joined TTLA was something called a listserv. And back then, understand, we're talking about 25 years ago. And it wasn't like today where you had artificial intelligence and Google and all that, where you could just type in something. You had the smartest people in Texas that were plaintiffs lawyers that you would type in something, and no matter who you were, they would come back with answers. And there was this guy named Guy Choate, and I don't know if hopefully
Still right.
Guy is. I was just laughing because I was a little snobby because Dallas, that's what we do.
Sure.
And
We know.
see a little lawyer respond to every request and with substance. And for a while, I'm going, who the hell is this guy? And then after a while, it was like, not only who the hell is this guy? This guy's the smartest lawyer in the entire state. Great story. 10 years later, fast forward, he was kind enough to involve me in a trucking case. And we are out in the boonies of West Texas, and one of my best friends, a guy named David Dobbs, plaintiff's lawyer, Tyler, calls me up, and we barely get cell phone service. We're out in the real boonies, and he goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well, I'm with Guy, and we're working on a trucking death case." And he goes, "Do you get CLE for riding in the car with Guy?"
There's been a couple, like Guy Choate is a name that always pops up. What was the name of the guy? He died maybe 1 or 2 years ago. He wrote a bunch of books. He was always on the listserv too.
I don't know. Where's he from?
I couldn't tell you.
Help me.
There's a handful.
He had a beard because his picture was on his signature block.
Yeah, I don't.
And he wrote a bunch of books on stuff.
I think you're thinking of a guy that was more on the Texas lawyer guy that wrote a ton of procedural books.
Maybe that's who I'm thinking of.
I don't remember the guy's name, but I know he was a big into procedure, and he was big on that Texas lawyer site.
Maybe that's what I'm
I
thinking.
think you are. Our big guys are, people like Paul Gold.
Yeah, that's who I was.
Paul's in that, yeah.
There's so many, James Mazuka. The thing about the TTLA, and I want to do this real briefly, we are the largest law firm in the entire country. And we count as that. We have about 1,700 folks that are on the listserv, and we have a fair number that are active. And the thing about it is there is no other listserv in the country where lawyers help each other more than we do. And it was so important to me about, again, 16, 17 years ago, our listserv was just turned into a chat room. Chuckleheads like Kyle, we're sitting there Friday afternoon. Hey, it's wine o'clock, whatever it was. And he'd throw out his latest sexist joke.
No.
And it was
Sounds like Kyle.
was really turning into pretty much a cesspool. And what we were seeing.
I think you mean locker room talk.
Very nice. Trumpian.
Cheers.
Well done. And we saw really great lawyers like John Howie, Jim Purdue Jr., people like that. They just started abandoning the listserv because they're going, screw this. I don't want to wade through several hundred emails for the one or two that was worth it. So I made a horrible mistake. What do you think that mistake was, Kyle?
You challenged them to an honor duel.
What, like Hamilton?
Close. Very close. But instead, I bitched about it to TTLA.
And they put you in charge, didn't they?
Bet your ass they did. And then up until then had been the head of the TTLA listserv, and it was just a hot potato that he said, "Oh, it's yours." And the beauty of the thing is we got together a committee, and obviously I felt very strongly and kind of led that committee, and we kind of stopped a lot of the crap. And it still goes on today.
It's a life sentence.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, of all the things on my tombstone, besides being a friend of Kyle, I hope that will be, he helped preserve the TTLA listserv and helped a whole lot of lawyers represent their clients better.
I only have one suggestion.
Oh, go.
Which is when somebody on the listserv announces a big verdict, incorporate a button where we can just like it instead of congrats.
No. I've spent half my life saying private replies.
Nope.
No, doesn't happen.
Be louder.
You know what? You know what I did the last time when we made our new rules this last year?
What?
I said, screw it. We're not going to prohibit it because we're not enforcing it. Private replies are now encouraged rather than prohibited because we couldn't do a damn thing about it.
So I have actually like a 100% won cases that I thought I would lose because of the listserv.
Oh, I've gotten great stuff going into depots too.
Golden nuggets. I had a case a few years ago that was in arbitration. And as arbitrators are wont to do, they let the other side designate an expert literally the Thursday night before a Monday trial. And I put something on the listserv. I was like, has anybody ever heard of this doctor from San Antonio? And one of the Herrera brothers literally responded in 2 minutes. I mean, I did not depose the guy. His report was boilerplate. And this was an operated back case. And literally one of the Herrera brothers sent me an email and was like, what do you need? And I spent a very short amount of time, less than 3 hours. And I put this guy on the stand after he gave his direct saying that my client's surgery should have cost the Medicare rate, which was less than $8,000. He had given testimony in the preceding year in another case saying that same surgery should have cost $80,000. I mean, exact same levels, same gender, same age range.
He just missed a zero.
Yeah. And so they directed him. I did not object. The other side did like an hour, 10-minute direction. And okay, I'm going to make up a name because I would hate to be wrong about the name, and I'm 90% sure. I'm going to call him Jeff. I'm going to call him Jeff Takeuchi. That's not his name, but he does have a Japanese name. He sat there, and
Is Takeuchi Japanese?
Yeah, it could be. And I go, Jeff Takeuchi, are you the only neurologist practicing neurosurgery in San Antonio? He goes, yeah. And I go, your father doesn't do that, does he? No. Is your address this, this, and this? Yes. Have you ever given testimony that the exact same surgery should cost $80,000? No. I'm going to hand you a deposition from an administrative law hearing. I'd like you to read along with me. A 3-level fusion and a female aged 58 to 63 should cost $80,000. Did I read that right? He goes, uh-huh.
Okay.
And the opposing counsel, like, he literally just was like, I object to the transcript. And then the judge was like, you want to pass the witness? I was like, oh yeah, and that's all the questions I have, unless you've got something for this guy. I mean, it was fantastic, solid gold. The TTLA listserv is, if you're a young lawyer that's not a member of TTLA, you're wasting your time. You got to join.
It really is, because it's the one thing you can do, whether you're contributing or you're a lurker or whatever. You can truly get the best stuff from the best lawyers. And obviously, I would think Kyle probably gets a little better stuff than the average guy because Kyle's a giver. And
he is.
But I will tell you, it's a very, very, it's the most crucial tool, honestly, for a plaintiff's lawyer that doesn't have the infrastructure that, look, you've got a great firm. You've done incredibly great work. You've got stuff inside your own firm. If you need research done or whatever, you've got to walk down the hall or do it yourself.
Step one is TTLA listserv.
Oh, even you.
100%.
Wow.
Somebody has already done it better and has already done it. Why would I reinvent the wheel?
Okay. You guys want to hear a great story real quick that, I don't know if you know this, I got fired from a defense firm.
I knew
with
that.
cause.
Absolutely. I became a plaintiff's lawyer overnight because I had nothing else to do. And one of my first stops was to visit with Bill's boss, Kyle Farah. Literally,
Smartest guy in the room most of the time.
literally within the first week of having a practice open. And I walked into his office. I was like, what do I do, man? I'm totally lost. I have no idea. And he's like, well, you're going to need some cases. And he goes, like, no, seriously. He goes, you need a lot of credit. You need probably an office at some point in the next 6 months. He goes, you got to join TTLA. He's like, you're a brand new lawyer. It's going to cost you $100. It's like, you got to join TTLA. He's like, come on, sit down. He shows me the listserv.
Yeah.
He downloads the application, and he goes, all right, you need 2 references. And I go, that are members of TTLA. And I go, well, you're one. And he goes, yeah, happy to do it. And I go, well, is your partner here? He's like, nah, he's on a trip. Look at the website, and it said, message from the president of TTLA, who was Paul Waldner.
Of one of the greatest human beings ever known.
Yeah. And I go, well, I know that guy. So I I put his name down as a reference, and I just fax over the blank form, and I write, call me. We're from the same hometown. I grew up a block away from him in Friendswood, Texas. Wow. So I don't hear from him. This is like on a Thursday. I'm sitting at my phone, and at like 2 o'clock on a Sunday, I get a phone call. Hello? Is this Kyle Herbert? I was like, it is. He was like, this is the president of TTLA, Paul Waldner. I was like, hey, Paul. He was like, I just wanted to make sure this wasn't a joke, that you were serious about this. So I figured, he was like, I don't get a lot of applications asking for a reference to the president of TTLA from people I don't know. So I figured a test of your stick-to-itiveness would be to call you on a Sunday afternoon, and you answered. And I go, great. And I explained to him how I knew him, that he was the lawyer that did Career Day when I was a 17-year-old.
Shut up. Are you serious?
Joke.
What's your hospital mascot?
Friends with Mustangs.
Very nice. Keep on going.
And this is not a joke. We were on the phone till about 6 o'clock Sunday evening, him telling me, you know, this is how you give back. This is how we're going to get you clients. This is how we're going to set up your office. And then he told me this at the end. He goes, Kyle, look, it's been great talking to you. I got to go. He said, the next 12 months, any CLE you want to go to, any dinner, any lunch, any judicial event sponsored by TTLA, I am your scholarship provider. You can ride with me. I will introduce you to everybody I know, and you're not going to pay a nickel for this for the first 12 months. I mean, like, wow. Just like.
So he's who we get to blame for you being who you are.
If you have any complaints about the person before you, about 80% of them could be directed to Paul Dalton.
But you know what? That's what happens in our group. We are family. And there are stories after stories after stories of people that have done exactly as Paul, though quite honestly, Paul was the best of us. Sure.
I like the listserv because it's definitely changed. I've been on it for 11 years now. And in the 11 years, probably the last 7, it's changed. Nobody chases business there. Nobody's trying to get your cases and stuff like that. So like when I go to an AAJ conference, I feel like 90% of people are like, refer me your business. And I'm like, that's not how this works.
Why that is the case.
And I don't know your middle name, but 2 of them are Todd and Clement. But I like that because it's where you can go for help, and everybody's very generous with it. I've gotten a bunch of great stuff from it. And yeah, I can be the greatest lawyer in the world. And my first step is going to be to a listserv to see if somebody's already done it and done it successfully.
And I ducked out for a little bit. Did y'all talk about the advocacy component of TTLA government law?
Not yet.
We're about to, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Pete's a Republican, so
I'm
I'm just he's agnostic.
What do you say? He just say to Pelly.
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
I'm the party of the opposition.
No. So obviously TTLA has the most beautiful building in Austin, right next to the
I've never seen it. I didn't know we had a building.
Are you kidding?
Oh my God.
Not even kidding.
Best building in Austin.
It looks down
literally, we are, the Capitol's here. We're here.
Huh. I'm gonna have to go check it out.
And then there's the cloakroom.
Which is
There's a cloakroom?
The cloakroom is the bar.
Oh, the cloakroom bar.
Yeah. And then there's a lobby that happens to be there that has really, really, really good whiskey. And it is just a place that, you know, we literally have lunch for the legislators every day during session.
Yeah. For 180 days.
Yeah. Because you can be Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. You are welcome to come over. It is a non-threatening environment. It is a place for you to feel comfortable. And that's what TTLA is all about.
Do you have to be a legislature to get in?
And the reality is, you know, what I laugh about TTLA is,
to be honest, not only are you invited to go, if they find out you're in town, they're going to call you and say, hey, this legislator from Normangie's coming into town. I'd like you to read something about Normangie and show this guy. Like they will draft you into.
Who are these people that are getting drafted into this?
so we have what's called 5-day chairs. And so besides our professional lobbyists, which are significant, we have in-house lobbyists as well as external lobbyists. But we also have volunteers, people that come down called 5-day chairs that will spend a week of their time during session basically looking at every bill, seeing where the threats are, helping research, helping, hobnob with legislators. It is an all hands on deck. The only reason we still survive is the fact of Texas is incredibly screwed up governmental system where we have this very limited legislative period every 2 years that runs about 6 months, and then you get to hold your breath for another 18 months till it happens again.
Yeah.
And in that little limited time,
Yeah, unless we have a special session, which we always have.
special is not so much unless they've really decided they're coming after us. We're not like the whole special this time has all been on school finance. And so far that has not hit us. The thing that makes TTLA, and I will tell you guys this is just an advocacy standpoint. We all thought in 2003 we were done. 2003 is when they passed comprehensive medical malpractice reform, otherwise known as let's throw out the baby with the bathwater, because we went ahead and threw out vast majority of med mal cases. At that time, it's really stunning because we're all looking at a new world. You'd be stunned to know that probably at least 25% of the plaintiffs' lawyers in this state were med mal lawyers. And so you crippled our
And defense.
and the same thing, because the defense thought they would survive. One after another, the defense firms went down right with the plaintiffs' firms.
I remember I was a
And we all
sophomore.
thought, once they passed the constitutional amendment that gave them the ability to cap damages, we thought they were coming after us. Because any of you that's ever practiced in Colorado, you would see caps. If you're in Kansas, there's caps. And so we thought it was coming. Instead, since 2003, we've raised the minimum limits from 20,000 to 30,000. We have had, of course, death by 1,000 cuts. There's still every year something happens. But in general, the practice of law as a plaintiff's lawyer in the state of Texas is still viable. And there's really only one reason that you can say it is, and that's because of the good advocacy of TTLA.
I thought you were going to say Kyle River. How do I become a 5-day chair? That sounds actually very fascinating.
You know what? I will guarantee you, all you've got to do is you're already a 5-day chair. I just need to
You heard it.
your information.
Put it on a plaque. It's going in my office.
It will be.
So the 5-day chairs, Todd, lawyer will go up and kind of sit up in the gallery or
No, you'll actually sit at TTLA. We bird dog every bill that gets filed. We know every hearing that's taking place. Generally 5-day chairs are not testifying. That's generally going to be the president or one of our various.
You testify? God help us.
So I did this a couple of years
What
ago.
you did?
Please tell us. Oh my God. So I've done it a few times.
Wow, and we still haven't practiced.
I'd love to testify.
I will tell you the most, you want to feel dumb. Let me tell you how to feel dumb. You go up there, you do 5-day chair, and the person who is your Sherpa and put in charge of keeping you out of mischief is
James Field?
Mark Kincaid.
Oh,
And
late Mark Kincaid.
the late Mark Kincaid. And then your first day there, the loser pays legislation falls on Mark Kincaid's desk. Mark Kincaid calls you and says, you're going to need a suit. You're going to be giving testimony, but you're going to have to help me draft this brief first. He was like, you're going to testify first. I'm going to testify second. James Field is going to testify third. You need a tie. So I literally worked, I think, probably 13 hours a day, every day for 5 days that culminated with me testifying on a loser pays bill. And
How'd that work out for us?
well, it did get passed.
Did get passed.
I would like to pretend that it had some. I think they were just filling spots, like on the bench, right? They just needed to chew up time.
I hate to tell you this, but they don't fill spots. If they did not think that you were not going to step on it, they would not have put you up there.
Well, it was a ton of fun, and I'll tell you what's amazing about it is, like, I know just a little bit about how the legislature does this, but to sit in a room with these lobbyists and guys like Mark Kincaid, who's passed away now, who know more about the insurance industry than I've forgotten. I mean, these guys are just whiz-bang smart. It's an education in and of itself.
It is.
And also to watch them persuade legislators as best they can, like to take a Republican guy who's for this bill and be like, I know you think this is going to be great for you, but let's think about all the other ways this bill is going to have impacts that you haven't even thought of. It's really entertaining stuff.
Absolutely.
All right.
I'd like to do that.
Shifting gears, you were involved in a pretty big case, or at least famous case in 2014 involving a teen who I guess had been in a car accident and somehow had pled a defense of something new no one had heard of before called affluenza. So
Like the Spanish kind.
yeah, can you kind of lay that out?
Start with the basic facts of of the case.
So the basic facts of the case were that Ethan Couch was a 15-year-old kid, 16-year-old kid who was living in his parents' second home. He had dropped out of school. His dad allowed him to drive his car to school at age 13. Might give you an idea of the parental responsibility issue.
Where was this?
This is in Dallas. This is in Mansfield, Texas.
Oh.
And on one particular night, he was throwing a party, which we was wont to do, with about 6 other kids. And about 11:30, one of the young girls needed some feminine hygiene products. And so they all jumped into the Ford F-250 Harley truck to make a run down to the gas station. On the way, and literally it's on the same road where the crash occurred on the way, Ethan decided to play chicken with another car.
Jesus.
And imagine these these are nice homes. The homes are protected by a large bar ditch. And the only way you can get to the homes is through basically a bridge, okay, with the bar ditch, the circular bar ditch piping in the middle.
Cattle guard.
Yeah, they're not really cattle guard, just a bridge. But imagine really a big sloped bar ditch, okay? Well, told you that story, tell you this story. About 30 minutes before this happened, a young girl had had too much to drink and wrecked her car in a single car accident on one of these bar ditches. My client, along with his wife and daughter, who was a nurse at the time, came out to comfort this young girl. And then not long after that, just before they headed down the road playing chicken, a youth pastor, along with 2 other kids, had also stopped to offer aid. Well, when Ethan was playing chicken, he whipped his Harley Davidson truck, Ford F-250, over to the bar ditch. And when he did, it was not far away from where these people had gathered. And he literally hit the bridge going into the home, and the 4 people that were there literally were like bowling pins and all died instantly. So,
I remember the case. I don't remember the facts. I was in law school.
in the aftermath, we got hired to represent Eric Boyle's wife and deceased wife and daughter. And we were in the criminal juvenile hearing to see what was going to happen to Ethan. And the family had money. And they managed to get a psychiatrist to come up and testify. And I was literally in the cheap seats for this testimony. And he got up there and said, this child, of course called him a child even though he's 16, should not be put in juvenile detention or anything else because he is a victim of affluenza. Well, when that happened, I've got a yellow pad taking notes, and I've still got it at my office. I wrote in 6-inch affluenza, exclamation point, and my partner was right next to me, and I'm giving her this, and I'm just going, oh my God. And what he said was that because his family was so affluent and put no limits on him, he had basically been improperly raised, so he's not responsible for his own actions.
Exhibit A.
You need to meet Paige and Joe Herbert someday.
And this particular juvenile judge bought it.
Oh, Lord.
And instead of sentencing him to jail for juvie, because he was still a juvie, they weren't trying him as an adult, they went ahead and sent him to rehab.
Was he intoxicated when the accident happened?
Oh, yeah. Extremely. And so it resulted in a national
I remember the story. What year was it?
2014.
14. I remember. I was like, I got out in 13, but I remember it started.
And now I told you that story to tell you this story because it kept getting better. Well, obviously, we filed lawsuits, and I can't go into why the lawsuits were eventually resolved, but a buddy of mine and I represented the youth pastor. I represented the two dead people. We were so pissed off that we kept out a very minor injury so that we could continue to prosecute the claim, even though they thought they had managed to resolve all the claims. And we prosecuted it real hard. And when we did, we managed to get 2020's interest because they were still interested in the case. And it was about to go to trial. And after we developed all this testimony, 2020 did a full hour on it, which, normally they do 20 minutes and that kind of thing. They did a full hour. And right after they did the full hour and it got published, Ethan and his mom took off for Mexico. Why? Because of the publicity from 2020, somebody had filmed him playing beer pong.
Like recently.
Well, no, this is like at 16.
Oh.
So in other words, while he's still on probation.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
They got him doing beer pong. So mom, rather than allow him to finally face the music, they headed down to Mexico. And for weeks, we're on the lam.
Fugees.
And I laughed, and we were talking about earlier, there is no bigger flop sweat in the world than being on CNN Live, because family by then was just so fed up with this whole situation. They said, please, you be our spokesman, you do this. And so, we got to be, the incredible white hat talking about how terrible, this kid was. He finally got busted. They finally extradited him. And believe it or not, he finally ended up doing roughly 2 years worth of jail time.
He's out.
He's out.
What's his name?
Ethan Couch.
Go look him up.
Amazingly, has not gotten into trouble since.
That hadn't got caught.
Mom's gotten into trouble since. Dad's gotten in trouble since. Look, Ethan wasn't the problem.
Because they had the Dallas influenza.
Problem.
Affluent.
I know. I know.
These were really, really, really bad parents, and they practiced. I hope they didn't ruin Ethan. I hope Ethan's learned his lesson.
Has anybody ever used that defense before?
Or since?
And no one.
Or since, yeah. I mean, it wasn't effective.
Nationally, you could no more use that right now. That would.
You ruined it, Todd.
Yeah, way to go.
You ruined it for everyone.
Kyle's children are now going to have to face the music if they get in trouble because they can't say.
Ultimately, Todd, the civil side of it, which you handled for some of the families, that's settled with
it resolved.
Got it. Is that what led you into another passion of yours, which I know is distracted driving? Is that
actually no? That started back in 2011. I happened to get a commercial driving case that was very early, and what we found out was it had killed a mom and a grandmom. And in the immediate aftermath of the crash, the offending driver for Cable One, which was the 10th largest cable company in the country at the time, owned by the Washington Post, he said, I was texting before the crash. I looked down, and when I looked up, I couldn't stop. He had a quarter mile of clear vision before he rear-ended our client at highway speed while she was waiting to make a left-hand turn. As that case really was the case that put me on the map as a lawyer, but also put me on a pathway for safety advocacy.
Was it a verdict or?
Yeah, just we literally settled it exactly a year to the day after the crash.
How did it put you on the map?
It put me on the map because what happened was I learned so much about distracted driving. There was a expert in Utah at the time who was the leading expert in the country named Dave Strayer. Dave Strayer was at the University of Utah. He's a neuropsychologist, and he was the guy. So I hired him. And after a while, Dave saw how passionate I was about it. He goes, hey, why don't you go on the road and talk with me on, because I'm getting constant requests. This was back when Oprah was doing her no phone zone programs. This was back when it was just the infancy of distracted driving.
Yeah, everybody had to like promise to Oprah that we weren't going to text and drive. I remember.
Because 2011, that about Apple iPhone? Because that was, remember back in the day, you would probably don't know this, Bill, but you'd have to text, and you'd have to hit the button 3 times.
Pete, I was 13 when we had to do that.
Yeah.
So I mastered that.
Okay,
We were playing Snake on our Nokia phones too.
Okay, but that was when texting started being a thing, right?
It did.
Okay.
And so from there, we ended up becoming part of a team that talked for the National Safety Council all over the country to businesses. And so what we'd have a scientist, which was Dave Strayer or Paul Ashley, who is frankly an amazing expert witness out of the University of Central Florida, I believe. Now, he was at Kansas for many years.
I've used him.
I've used him.
Fantastic.
Okay.
We used him in we had a pedestrian run over by the safety man of a construction site. Oh, wow. And it was great. I mean, we deposed the safety man who had set the rules, who then broke the rules and ran over our client. And he did
We used him in a giant case in Fort Worth. The newspaper company, there was a wreck in the highway. It was kind of a bad one, and a bunch of people pulled over to go help in the middle of the highway, and texting and driving. Actually, I think this person was streaming a video at this point. This is like 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and never saw anything and plowed through a bunch of Good Samaritans and stuff. But yeah, it was the Fort Worth. It's like the Statesman or not Star Teller. Yeah. Then it was a 18-wheeler full of them, and I didn't realize how heavy paper was.
Yes. So we get Paul to talk about the science. Me, that would be the stick that would talk about the law. We would have another guy named Joe McKillips, who was with a national firm that had stopped all cell phone driving to say it didn't hurt our productivity. And then the final one would usually be a victim that had lost a family member due to, distracted driving. And we wouldn't tell the last one because his name was Dave Teeter, who also worked for National Safety Council. What we would have is these seminars where industry would come in, Exxon, Mobil, Walmart, you name it. And we would basically, educate them of the dangers of distracted driving. But not only that, I would tell them that now that you've attended this, you know better. And if you don't do better and you're involved in a bad crash, this is punitive damage stuff. And we found
You say that at the end of the presentation?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we found out over time that there were literally tens of thousands of drivers that were at least banned from cell phone use while driving because of our work. We did it the same for NHTSA. We did it for the Texas Department of Transportation. I spoke in Virginia. I did it in Florida. I did it in Nebraska. I did it in North Dakota. And all this is pro bono. Most of the time, they wouldn't even pay me the flight. But it just became...
We flew private.
Yeah, private. if they went to North Dakota...
Hey, if Southwest doesn't fly there, I don't need to go there.
I get you. And it just...
Welcome to Hawaii.
It meant a lot because instead of just picking up the pieces, which is what all of us do in this business, we were trying to prevent something from happening. And it was really, really, it still does. I still talk to a fair number of high schools, industry, et cetera, on it.
So this is your public service announcement right now.
You bet.
What do you make your kids do on their cell phones? What do? You no cell phones in the car that you can reach?
It goes in the glove box, and if I catch you, the car gets sold.
Sold. I like the rule.
I mean, you got to have, because what we all know is the only way an effective cell phone policy can be is there has to be a clear ban, there has to be education so that people understand why, and then there has to be consequences. And you can use this in every single one of your cases because we have case after case after case where there's bans, and most of them have some degree of education. They still have any freaking consequences.
We need an app. If you're going more than 20 miles an hour,
There is one.
Oh, well, yeah, there are
apps.
yeah.
Are there? And do you want to plug one? Is there a good one?
There are a bunch of them out there, and you just have to be mindful, and you have to grab one, and you got to use it. And last year we had to handle a case that was another distracted driving case where literally a dump truck turned in front of a motorcycle, made a left turn in front of a motorcycle, and you can imagine it was bug on a windshield. The guy died instantly. And excuse me, it wasn't a dump truck, it was a cement mixer, excuse me. And
Is this the one where you have the video of the guy?
we got
Okay, so I've seen this video. It's horrifying.
It is. And the guy is on his phone, hands-free. You can hear him talk. And it's what we call inattention blindness. If you've had Paul Ashley, you will hear about inattention blindness where you look, but you don't see. Well, we looked into this particular cement mixer company. They had a ban. They had some education. But guess what? This particular driver spent his entire day, and he'd worked for him for years, with a Bluetooth around his freaking neck, walking around the yard. A Bluetooth speaker to facilitate him using his cell phone. Then we pulled his cell phone records, and we found out that in the 3 months prior to this crash, over 150 times, because we compared the cell phone records with his driver logs, which were electronic logs, so we could know exactly when he was on his cell phone, over 150 times, he had been talking with this same phone buddy that worked for the same company during work hours. In this particular call, it lasted over 40 minutes. And then he killed somebody. And of course, then we spent a lot of time talking to the company, asking questions like, when are you going to get a zero tolerance? Because they were getting, with your driver cams, you get notification constantly that people are on their phones. You get that event, companies do. We had all that evidence, but the company, they weren't doing jack crap.
Yeah, it's funny because I've mediated hundreds of cases, and I've yet to have one where they've got them dead to rights that they were on the phone, which we all know.
I got one right now. He's
Yeah.
driving for Penske.
Yeah, everyone thinks it happened, but they just, for whatever reason, no one has established that someone was on.
Well, and one of the really cool arguments that you can make in almost any rear-end collision case, just routine car wreck case, in your closing argument, and you do it in your final close, all you can, and you don't have any direct evidence of phone use, what you can say is, I think we all have a pretty good idea of why this crash happened. Under that circumstance, every single juror is going to know exactly what you're talking about. Because think about it. When you were a youngster 40 years ago,
More than that.
and you saw somebody driving like a damn fool, what was the first thing you thought? 40 years ago.
Get out of the way.
No, come on.
Drunk?
Drunk.
Yep.
Absolutely. First thing you thought was that person's drunk. Now today, when you're
Texting.
absolutely get off your damn phone. That's the first thing you think about, and that's exactly what every single juror thinks as well.
If you continue to do these speeches on it and you need help, let me know. Because in Friends with Texas, actually, I lost a very dear friend because a 16-year-old girl was texting and driving, and he got drunk and decided to walk home and was on the side of 518.
So, the legislature has passed a bill banning talking and driving, texting and driving, and
Under 18 for sure. Yep.
several times.
Wait, I thought they pushed it. Yeah, it got passed.
Okay.
And so that was something that we were highly involved in from an advocacy standpoint, both myself as well as the family that spawned it all. And it's not the fact that it's against the law that's important. It's the fact that parents can tell children that it's against the law. It's the fact that there is, okay, once again, 40 years ago when you started driving, did you?
Well, you have to hook the horses to the buggy.
You walk to the front of the car and you wind it.
That's going to be funny.
Do you remember when seatbelt use became mandatory, or was that before your time?
It was right about when I was probably 16.
Okay.
Late 70s?
And think about the fact that back then, how many people would set on their damn seatbelts so that it wouldn't go off, but they were, I'll be damned if somebody's going to tell me how to wear a seatbelt.
Or you'd put it on and put the shoulder behind you because that was how you fought the
Or
fought
even the motors, remember, they came out of the door.
Uh-huh.
The shoulder belt came out of the door. But now, I mean, when you get in an Uber, what's the first thing you do?
Buckle up.
Buckle up.
Buckle up. And not because
I don't want to get a bad rating.
Well, when Peter gets in an Uber Black, he's very fancy.
Yeah. Someone else puts the seatbelt on me.
Okay. But that's where I'm hoping we get with regard to texting, the same way we've gotten with seatbelt, where it becomes the norm not to do something or to be safe as opposed to that. So that's what the law is really important about, not about the little ticket, because virtually
I don't.
no tickets.
This might be a hot take, but I don't think the law matters as much as the culture.
That's what
I think when we start publicly shaming, like when you're riding with your friend and they pull out their phone and they're driving, it's kind of like so there was a slur that was growing up was used a lot, and it was a homophobic slur.
Don't use it.
I'm not. Come on, Pete. That's Kyle's job.
Yeah.
I got to college in my freshman year. Somebody dropped it. I thought nothing of it, and I mean the whole place turned upside down on it, and that was how I learned.
Sure.
I haven't said that word before. I haven't said it since.
Yeah.
We need something. We need a cultural shift on that, because too often on the freeway, you can look over and see somebody.
I caught a friend the other day doing it while I was in the car, and I said, "Put your damn phone up." And they kind of looked at me, and I wasn't freaking joking.
Mm-hmm.
And look,
We know it's wrong.
and this was a lawyer. He knew it was wrong. Now, tell you what's going to be fascinating, guys. I had a lady total my existing car, and so I got a new BMW X5 with the new technology that's probably second only to Tesla.
With the recalls, probably first to Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
And I teach at North Texas Law School, and I'm way up north in Dallas. And that little bad boy is driving me to and from my classes of late. I've only had it for a couple of weeks.
It's kind of like autopilot.
And it's going to be really fascinating, because what's going to solve the cell phone problem is self-driving. It's going to solve all sorts of problems. It's going to put us all out of business.
I got a question. So I did the Tesla self-driving death case in Tempe.
Oh, wow.
And so with your BMW, I know that we have 360 camera, infrared, LiDAR, and LiDAR.
We do.
Do you have all four of those? Because usually until very recently, certain platforms outside of Subaru has all four. Everybody else only had two or three.
All I know is this is the new stuff as of September, and they literally do not require you to have your hands on the wheel.
Okay.
And so I really love that technology, because I believe that ultimately, hopefully, that car is going to be a better driver than I am. And certainly at night, into the rain and things like that, am I comfortable in any way, shape, or form taking my hands off the wheel? Hell no.
It's going to be safer and better until that car delivers you to your robot overlords, right? I mean, we're like this. No, it's Skynet, right? Like you just click.
I think Barron Trump is the overlord.
It's just going to be like the Terminator.
So the
food for robots.
The problem with, at least this was 2000, end of 2018 when I handled the self-driving death case, and they were doing the test runs in certain cities, and Arizona was one of them. The problem was the calibration because you can make a self-driving car. You can make any car, and we could stop deaths on the highway almost instantaneously with one law.
Sure.
It's like maximum speed limit 20.
Okay.
That you could do it.
No, I get it.
But the problem is calibrating it for comfort versus in Arizona, they couldn't tell if it was a trash bag blowing across the road or a homeless person. Unfortunately, it was a homeless person. And the driver was supposed to be, attentive. Yeah. He's watching an episode of The Voice, and he's famous for it now. But I'm very curious when people are encouraging self-driving vehicles on how much of the technology they have, because patents have compartmentalized the ability for vehicles to incorporate all four of the necessary requirements. Because the F-35, it's self-driving. Yeah, I mean, and that's a jet. They can put that technology in a car. It's just, can you do it with patents now?
Okay, we've run the course of
the gauntlet.
This, yes, and our fearless leaders over there are giving us the eyes.
I feel like I felt pretty smart on that one, huh?
Need to wrap this up. Yeah. We wanted to hit it on a high point, Bill. You sounded like you're using tons of
learned hand language.
Yeah, there was a lot of technology and law. So anyhow, Todd, thank you so much for joining us.
It's such a good time. Thanks. Todd came all the way down here from Dallas
and brought drinks and snacks
because he had to come down here have a bunch of motions to compel and sanctions hearings, right? That's what Dallas.
One, I came down here because Kyle's my hero. And I just wanted to hang out with him for an evening.
Well, you got your wish. He brought his hair game.
Yeah, he's got his trial hair going. I like it.
Did not disappoint.
I am in the middle of trial. We'll get back to it. Todd, thanks so much. Really a pleasure and an honor to have you.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you very much. Good night. Okay.
All right.
I'm serious about the 5 days.